Assalamualaikum and hi to everyone. Okay, thank you for watching this video. So in this video, we continue on the previous part of ERD, talk about the cardinality and connectivity. Before this, we already learned about the relationship. So now we talk about the cardinality and connectivity. So actually, this cardinality and the connectivity is based on the relationship of the entities. So relationship can be classified as either one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many. So this one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many can consider as the connectivity of entity to another entity. So cardinality is the minimum maximum numbers of the instances of entity B that can or must be associated with each instance of the entity A. Okay, so the number of entity type which is involved in the relationship is referred to the cardinality. Okay, example here we have professor teach class. Professor teach a class, or a class is taught by the professor. So this one is the connectivity. But how many? So it's referred to the cardinality. Here, the connectivity is one to many. That is the connectivity. The cardinality is 1 or maximum 1 and 4. 1 and only 1. 1 to 4. Okay, so that is the cardinality. So in chain notation, it's look like this one: 1 and 1, comma 4, and 1, comma 1. In the crossword notation, sorry, this one is here, and this one is here. Okay, 1 and only 1, 1 or maximum 4 classes. So it means that one professor teach 1, at least it must teach 1 or 4 classes. Okay, that is a simple chain notation and crossword notation. Okay, so this is how we can present the cardinality and the connectivity using the chain notation and crossword notation. So the next part, okay, we look at the arrow. Okay, first we go for the chain model. So in chain model, we have 1 to represent 1, and we have M to represent many. And in crossword notation, okay, we use this symbol, 1 horizontal line with the 1 vertical line to represent 1. Okay, and then we have 1 horizontal line with this line look like arrow to represent many. And then we have 1 many, 1 horizontal line, 1 vertical line, and this arrow. Okay, so this one is referred to 1 or many. Okay. And in the symbol, we have 1 horizontal line with 2 vertical line. So this symbol represents that 1 and only 1, means it must be 1. The mandatory is 1. So these are the difference between the chain model and crossword notation. So the next part is about the optional and mandatory relationship. Okay. We have 1 as the mandatory, and we can have 1 or many. So an optional relationship exists when an entity occurrence on one side of the relationship does not require a corresponding entity occurrence on the other side of the relationship. Okay, here we have the mandatory part and we have the optional part, either 0 or many. Okay, one lecturers handle non-class or many class. This one is the optional part. Okay, this one is the mandatory part. This one lecturer handle many class. Okay, so a lecturer may handle 0 or many class based on this one. A class is handled by one and only one lecturer. Okay, for this part is class. This class is handled by one and only one lecturer. So this is how the mandatory and the optional can be used in the ERD diagram. So the first part for the chain model and for the root cross root model, and then we have the change notation. And then a weak entity means two criteria. So the first, it is existent dependent on another entity. So that is weak entity means the entity is not standalone. It depends on another entity. And its primary key is at least partially derived from the related entity's B key. So that is known as the weak entities. Yeah. We also have the strong entities. So the character or the criteria of the strong entities is vice versa of the weak entities. Mean is can be standalone, independent entity, not depends to another entity, and it has its own primary key, not get from the other entities. Okay. Another type we have the composite entities. So these composite entities used to transform the many-to-many relationship into a set of one-to-many relationship. In the previous part, we already learned about the bridge table. So it's referred to this composite entity. So implementation of a composite entity, and composite entities PK is a combination of the PK of the two entities that are connected by the composite entity. So composite entity is a weak entity. Means we need to combine one from another entity and another one from another entity in order to create its primary key for this composite entity. So composite entity is a kind of weak entity in the ERD diagram. Okay, example here, a car purchasing model. So we have the factory as the entity, car also as the entity, and then customer also as the entity. So we have three main entity. Okay, so we identify the relationship between entities. So factory produced the car. So the relationship between the factory and car, factory produced the car. The car is produced by the factory. Okay. Next, the relationship between the car and the customer. Car purchased by the customer. Customer purchased the car. So that are the relationship. So based on this diagram, it shows that we have a purchasing model that involve the relationship between the factory and the customer. So at here, based on this part, we already know that factory produce the car purchased by the customer. So you can represent this kind of model into the ERD or entity relationship diagram. So we have three entities here and two type of relationship. One is producing, another one is purchasing. So we need to use the verb, so produce and purchase. Yeah, another example here, we have our model of a book information system. Okay, you can relate this kind of system with the library system. So we have the publisher, we have the book, and we have the author. Publisher is entity, book also entity, author also entity. And then between them, we have the relationship. Publisher publish the book. The book is written by the author, or author write the book. So that's other relationship. So based on this kind of relationship, you can transform into the ER diagram. So basically, whatever being displayed or represented in the ER diagram will be used in our database. It's very crucial part to ensure that our data in the database are solid, clear, because later on when we want to create a system, we want to do the searching or query from the database. Okay, so basically this is the symbol for the ERD that you can use when you want to draw your ERD diagram. We have the entity, we have the relationship, we have the composite entity, which refer to the weak entity, we have the optionality, okay, and weak entity here. Okay, composite and weak entity is the quite similar. Okay. The next part, we have the relational key and the integrity constraint. So here is the type of key that we can use in our database. So first we have the candidate key. So this is referred to the attribute or group of attribute that identify a unique row in a relation. So one of the candidate keys is chosen to be the primary key. Okay, type of candidate key. Another key, we have the primary key. So any of the candidates that are selected to be the key or an attribute that uniquely identify each row in a relationship. So this key to identify each row. And then we have the foreign key. So an attribute in a one table whose values must match the primary key in another table, or whose value must be null. So attribute that act as a primary key in a related table. Okay, let's say you have a student ID and you want to identify the student cost is based on either in a student ID you have the student cost, student code, cost code, or in the cost table we have the student ID. So that's a foreign key in order to identify a value or another attribute from different table. And then we have the composite key, a primary key that consists of more than one attribute, especially when we talk about the many-to-many relationship. Okay, next is about the integrity constraint. Two types of integrity constraint. The first one is entity integrity. So under the entity integrity, all entries are unique and not part of a primary key may be null. Okay, we cannot have a null data. B, referential integrity. So under this part, if foreign key exists in one table, then the foreign key value must reference an existing primary key value in a table to which is related, and it can be null. So they are different. The first one, it cannot be null. The second one, it can be null. So example here, we have the publisher table and we have the book table. Okay, in publisher table, we have attribute publisher code, name, and city. And under the book table, we have book code, book title, publisher code, type, and price. So publisher code here is the primary key for the publisher table. Publisher code is the primary key for the publisher table. And in the same time, this publisher code is the foreign key in the book table. So here you need to notice that the foreign key value in the book table must match the primary key value in the publisher table. Okay, basically you can get the logical here at here. So this is how we develop our database. The next is about the definition of the ERD. Okay, ERD is a diagram that depicts entity relationship model, entities, attribute, and relation. And it also displays the connectivity and the cardinality. So if the question asks about the explain or define what is the ERD, so this is the right answer. You need to say that the ERD is a diagram that represents entities, attribute, and relationship. And it's also display the connectivity and the cardinality of each entities. It's also a tools to represent graphically the association between the entities in a information system. So view a system in terms of entity and the relationship. So this is referred to the ERD. So when you have the ERD model for your information system, people who have the knowledge on the ERD, or you know what kind of system, what are the table that involved in your system, what are the database that you need for your system. So here the step to develop the ERD. First, you need to identify the entities. It's just like the DFD diagram. You need to identify the entities that relate to your system, and then you identify the relationship between each entities in your system, and then you can start sketch your ERD. Okay, after that, you know the identity, you know the relationship, then you state the cardinality on screen. Okay, one mini about the relationship cardinality, and then after you able to identify the cardinality, create this primary keys for your ERD and add attribute for each entities. So these are the steps as a guideline that you can use in order to come out with your ERD model, ERD diagram for your information system. Okay, simple example here. A company has several departments. So each department has a supervisor and at least one employee. So we have departments, we have supervisor, and we have the employee. So that is the entities. So employee must be assigned to at least one, but possibly more department. So every employee must be assigned to department, at least one department, and at least one employee is assigned to a project. Okay, but an employee may be on vacation and not assigned to any project. Only certain employee, or we can have employee that work on project, and we can have the employee that not work for any project. So that are the definition of that part. Okay, and then the important data fields are the names of the departments, the project, supervisors, and employees, as well as the supervisor and employee number, and a unique project number. So that part is referred to the key of the table. Okay. So first, identify the entities. What are the entities? So based on the case study, the entities is the system. In this system are the department, the employee, the supervisor, and the project. So first step, identify the entities. Okay. One is tempted to make a company an entity, but it is false entity because it's only one instant in this problem. Means you can make a company as the entity, but in this case, company is the false entity because it's only one instant in this kind of study. So the true entities must have more than one instance. Step 2. Identify the relationship. Okay, based on the case study, you need to construct the following entity relationship metric. Okay, you already identified the department, the employee, the supervisor, and the project. So identify the relationship between department, employee, supervisor, and project. So here you come out with the table. So department and employee, department belongs to employee belongs to the department. Supervisor runs in the department. Okay, and then this one is relationship between department employee, department supervisor, department and project. This one is based on the case study in the previous slide. Next, we have employee and department. Employee is assigned or engaged with the department. Okay, employee, supervisor. Okay, employee with the project. Employee or this project use employee or employee assigned to project. Okay. And then we have the supervisor with the department. Supervisor run the department run by the supervisor. And then we have project. Employee works on this project. So these are the relationship based on the case studies. So number 3, you need to sketch the ERD. Okay, based on the entities that you have, you already identify the relationship, and then now you sketch the ERD for that system. Number 4, fill in the cardinality. Identify either it's 1 to 1, 0 or 1. Is it mandatory or optional? Is it many to many relationship? So you need to identify. So based on the case study, okay, each department has exactly one supervisor. So you have department, you have supervisor. So one department run by one supervisor. So mandatory is only one. Okay. Next part, the supervisor is in charge of one and only one department. Okay, supervisor only in charge one department. So this the cardinality for supervisor and department. Okay, the next, each department is assigned at least one employee. Each department at least has one employee. So we can have one too many. At least one, so one too many means that it can be one and it can be more. Next, each employee works for at least one department. Employee need to attach to department. So employee here, many or one employee must assign to department. Next, each project has at least one employee working on. So means if we have one project, so this employee must work on this project. Many or one employee works on 0 or many project. Okay, and an employee is assigned to 0 or more projects. So we use 0 or many. So this is the cardinality for this ERD. Number 5, you need to define the primary key. So the entities will become a table in your database, and then you need to identify the primary key. Okay, for example, for department, we can have the department name or department ID, and then supervisor number, employee number, and project number. So instead of department name, maybe we can use the department ID or department code. Okay, next, identify the attribute. You already sketch, you already identify the PK and FK. Then you can identify what are the attribute should be put in your table. So attributes like department name, project name, supervisor's name, employee's name. Okay. So that's the things, the step that you need to do when you want to come out with the ERD. Okay, the next part, you can look at this one. You draw the key base ERD. Number 6, you identify the attribute, then you can draw the key base ERD diagram. So there are two many-to-many relationship. There are two many-to-many relationship in the ERD. So between the department, employees, and the project. So we need to associative the entities department and the employee project. Means you can identify what are the many-to-many relationship, and then from the one many-to-many relationship, you can create the bridge table. Okay. So it's at last it look like this one. We have the entity name and we have the P key, and you can identify what are the other attribute involved. And then you can draw the full attribute ERD for each entities. Okay. So that's all for this video. So hopefully you able to learn about the ERD and now know how to come out with your ERD. Thank you and Assalamualaikum.